the agenda? Yeah.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and get started. We wanted to, I know if, Brian Hungerford were here today, he once again, bring gratitude for all of the movement that we've both made, especially last session was super productive and keeping that momentum going. You're gonna see that in, the proposal that we're bringing forward today. There is a lot of information, which I'll again go over quickly. It's kind of backstory. So a year from now, we can look back at this and have all of the information in one place. So Hannah's been awesome helping me work on these articles, and she's been great.
Do we have paper proposals?
No.
No.
Oh, you do, but
Well,
you want to go through your presentation?
Yeah,
first?
is it okay if we share
Oh, yeah.
first and then, okay. So again, the agenda slide, it has links to prior information. The one for January 10th was a comparison of what you guys brought forward to our prior offer. So again, just kind of having those documented here. There is a referral to the 24-25 update because we've kind of been anchored back to that as we talk about the first year. Our outlook, the comparison, and then some of the other items that we've considered or still seem to be either maybe on the table at some level. So they're included here today as well. Thanks, Hannah. So as a reminder, we have a lot of things going on as we closed out last year and came into this year. We quickly realized we had a budget deficit happening. And so we wanted to bring that to everyone's attention as quickly as we could. You know, the budget is not currently balanced, and anything we negotiate, of course, in excess of that will create a bigger budget gap in the current year that would have to be addressed more immediately. All right, Hannah, we're gonna cruise through this first part. None of this is new information for you all. This is the impact of the budget shortfall that we were experiencing. Mostly it was a couple major changes to 23-24 that gave us less revenue to begin this current year with. And that's something that we don't necessarily know until very late in the year. It was the end of June before we had run all of our payrolls out and had our finalized numbers. And it brought us to a budget gap of just over $9.5 million. These are the strategies that we developed and shared with the community and with our buildings. None of these are good ideas. Current update on this is that we had repackaged our agreements to hopefully see some savings in the first year with both licensed and classified groups. And we didn't see those savings, but we didn't see a growth in that gap either. So again, still working towards this target currently. I know that we probably have some second semester changes that will be rolling. Our approach to the offer, we're not a year at a time district. We like to have that 3 years for stability for planning purposes and also for our staff. They can see at the time that we finish what those salary and benefits will look like for the next couple of years. We do want to be targeted. We've had so many discussions about that. And the wage study that we did and implemented last time, we reran it again this year and shared that information with you and found that we were pretty close because we had managed to close some wage gaps in targeted areas. Staying student-centered, we spent a lot of time talking about that too, and your experience in district strategies to support staff and students. And then finally, just timely, we want to get done. We know you want to get done too, and we want to be able to get that implemented and have those implementation details clear for everyone so that you're not getting a lot of questions and we're not getting a lot of challenges too around those payrolls. Important information. This kind of compounds the longer term view for us as the PERS rates were released in October. An increase of 6.5 percentage points is really impactful. You can see that that costs $1.6 million for each point. So that is a budget impact of just over $20 million. And that's, it's deferred income, right? It's going to PERS to pay future benefits for all of us. So it's a good program, but it's a very expensive program. And there were some there were some valuation anomalies for the 21-23 valuation period that sets the rates for 25-27. There was a board informational session on that if you guys are interested in learning more about it. But it is very impactful to our budget and all public organizations budgets, not just school districts either. So really impacts us in a big way. Quick comparison of the change that occurred with that increase in PERS rate. So you can see that our overall payroll rate, the associated payroll expenses for each dollar of payroll will be about 40 cents as we move into 25-27. And that doesn't include insurance. That doesn't include the contribution towards insurance. That's just all of those things, paid leave Oregon, unemployment, PERS is by far the biggest chunk of that. But that's noteworthy if you're looking at it and from a budget perspective. All right, quick slide review of last settlement that took us over a year to get to. And probably the most impactful was, again, the implementation of the wage and salary study results over the 3-year period, kind of a phase in. But we ended after many discussions on 2 percentage points for GSI for each of the 3 years and $50 a month increase towards insurance. Step distribution, this is important when we're thinking about that stipend for folks on the top step that haven't moved. This has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years where people are more distributed across the wage scale and less on that top step. But it's important to take care of the folks that are there. Just a note on this, as we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit about the pay equity study and the work that's going to happen there. Based on some early looks at our staffing with Hannah, we are calculating about half of staff will receive some type of movement as a result of that study. And that will be implemented again in the second of the 3-year period. Schedule structure, again, this is it's historical. I'm not sure how it was developed, but you can see that the step 1 is the base rate for that row, for those positions on that row. And the GSI is applied to step 1. And then each step after that has a 3% tied to the prior step. So it's not GSI applied to each step along the way. It's 3, 3, 3, 3, and then the final step has a 4% increase. And so when people do the math on their hourly rate, they'll question that. They'll be like, well, if GSI was 4.25%, it may not crosswalk exactly to where they were in the schedule because it's only applied to the first step. So just to be clear, we get lots of questions about that. Okay, we can, this one, our last offer was 3.5%, $25 a month towards insurance, and then 3.75% GSI on top of the step movement, for a cumulative total of 20% increase for folks that receive both the GSI and the step movement over the 3-year period. This is the estimated cost of that offer. We'll just kind of keep moving forward. Sienna, this was the counter that you guys brought back to us on the 10th. Again, lots of movement and language alongside of this. Very impressive that we are moving in the same direction. You can see all the green are areas of agreement. So the first year, we're all the way there. We're all the way home. And at that time, it was still $1 million apart from the HSD offer over the 3-year period. And this is our proposal today, a significant, increase in our general salary increase, 1.25% added over years, 2 and 3. One of the things that we're thinking about and isn't included in the estimate is the impact of the pay study and the additional cost. That's not worked into here. We just have that understanding that about half of members will probably receive some type of movement as a result of that study. This is the estimated cost. You can see that we've included the $500 stipend to the top step for each of the 3 years and the essential for the second and third year. I apologize, you'll see that in writing. So not in the first year, and that will change these numbers in a little bit. But we do have the $150 essential worker stipend for each of the 3 years. And it's not dated, so that will be a permanent part of the agreement. It won't be static to any one given time period. So here's the cost comparison. Again, we have 3.5 GSI in the first year, 4.25 in the second year, and 4.5 in the third year. We are very close in terms of overall cost. We're just under $100,000 apart over the 3-year period, which is very encouraging. That's comparing what you guys have brought forward to what we're offering back.
Michelle, I believe our proposal on the 10th of January was a 3.5% GSI. Have you calculated for that and just not changed and not updated the?
Let me check on that for you.
Yeah.
Let me check on that for you. Because that would impact the cost. Right. These are some of the other things that were kind of outstanding. We have the holiday for 11-month Juneteenth for 11-month employees. We've included that. We have the change in vacation, which created an overall longer vacation amount that you could earn, and the ability to accumulate those days sooner. And along with the other language changes in the vacation article that would make it more accessible for staff, where it was limited before and was targeted time periods where it would make sense for people to really be gone. And we have some additional personal leave. Those values are based on the value of the work. So a day for people, right? And what utility that isn't going to have any. Okay. All right, this is just a recap of what we agreed to with the teachers in December. So we have 3.5 in the first year, similar. Thank you, Nathaniel, for pointing that out. We have 4.75 and 4.25 GSA in years 2 and 3. Their insurance did not increase from 23-24 for 24-25. They have a very robust insurance pool, so that's how we created space for that 3.5% GSI that they receive. And it's been implemented. So these are the next steps. Today, board work in regular session. Their next session will be on February 11th. And then we are really hoping to be in alignment and agreement, be able to settle today, get tentative agreement, and move towards ratification. And that would mean March payroll implementation after board action in February. Double checking. Question, because I think that's a pretty critical one.
I think you had the numbers as the same, which would indicate that because we were in alignment.
Yeah, that's my recollection. Going back and forth between like magic worksheets and
Yeah.
sometimes unfortunately. Yeah, we're in agreement. It was not, it's the header that's not right, or the description that's not right.
Thank you for that.
And I'll update that so you guys have it. For reference. Typically, we would provide for you, sample schedules. And I can prepare those. They're not. I don't have them right now, but I can prepare those this morning if you'd be interested in looking at them.
I think we can get back to you on that. We'll have some conversations. And see if that's necessary at this point.
Okay, I do want to note too that, it's not included here either, but we have heard the discussion around the pay differential for swing and overnight. And we are proposing 20% increase to each of those. Again, in that schedule, under either,
20 cents,
sorry, what did I say?
20%.
20%, 20 cents.
20% of 20 cents.
Yeah,
Can we see the language? I mean, that would be really helpful because if the presentations.
at
least for me to be able to follow on that.
Yes,
I do have a question about today's presentation. When you said, do we have the agenda? This is what we have. I was looking, I can't find this presentation you gave today electronically, and I don't think we have it on paper either. And I was wondering if you could email us that, because there's stuff linked in within it that would be helpful to look at.
certainly.
Thank you for always checking.
Yeah, usually we share it right after I present it, so that nobody's jumping ahead.
Okay.
Because I know
Oh,
it's
I
exciting
see.
material.
Okay.
After on the insurance one, but it is just everything in agreement with the last.
Oh, sit down now. We can.
We lined up. You're receiving our plan in our. I'm sure.
I got it. Are there any changes in 12? Is the
No,
district
it's-
accepting our proposal?
Yeah, I don't know why I printed it.
That's wonderful. Well, it can be nice to have clean copies
Yeah.
and the correct date at the top.
Always move them together. Because if there's a significant change to compensation, then we would have to maybe re-examine what we're offering. So again, it's just as we move closer, we've typically worked with those. That's, I think, why it's.
I mean, to that point, it's worth me asking, I mean, are we ready to TA on this? If you're accepting the union's proposal, certainly we would TA on insurance and keep moving, or should we consider these a package?
I would consider.
Okay. Okay, we will discuss in caucus then, and thank you.
Does anybody on our team have questions about Article 10 or Article 12?
Need a moment just to read.
Yeah.
that language.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Take-
fair.
Take a second. I'll ask, and I know that the answer to this is complicated. I know that the classified unit is larger than the licensed unit. But also, largely, is at lower salary levels. Why is the district's current proposal today not just in line with what you've offered licensed
think part of it has to do with the case study outcomes and the budget impact of that. We believe that that's in our common interest to go through that, but it is gonna come with the price tag. So I think, leaving some room to allow for that is important. We also have some other trade-offs in the agreement, the higher insurance from the beginning, for example, which is a pretty good benefit. We have the same, the essential worker, the top step stipend, those other targeted value add pieces that were attached to dollars that we didn't move, we didn't make movement in the same way with licensed. So I feel like the package here is still, fairly robust. And I mean, you're need to discuss it and counter. I wouldn't necessarily call that a final offer, but if you guys see room to do any trade-offs or move things around, I know that we will take a look at it.
Okay, thank you for that. I know you said that about 50% of classified staff will receive an increase through the wage equity study. So you've done some amount of that work. I'm curious how much of that work you've done, what you're estimating the cost is going to be to the district overall, and if 50% of classified are receiving an increase, generally how many are receiving one step versus two steps or more?
Yeah, we really haven't gone into depth, into the whole study. I know that, Hannah's excited about getting a jump on the word.
And by excited, you mean the other thing.
Yeah. But as we are looking at the number of folks who are on top step already, so they won't receive movement, and then the new folks coming into the system that will be placed in the correct place. Some folks may already be correctly placed, so by process of high level elimination, we think there will be about 50% of staff receiving movement, so at least one step as we move towards implementation. I think one of the other things too is the timing of it, and I know I don't think it's necessarily described in the language section. Yeah. Okay. That this is an accelerated implementation schedule to have it actually be effective as of July 1st, 2025. So again, that's another benefit. So I think we need to plan for some flexibility in the budget to accommodate that.
As I'm looking through this, are there changes to our last proposal, not around the amounts, but the language? I mean, this was I would not be surprised if there were changes. This was a new kind of concept we were moving to here in H3.
Yeah, I think we'll invite Hannah to kind of talk about, your perspective on that as the potential implementer of.
Yeah, so one of the big changes is that we'd like to do this pay equity study and implementation over the summer. This upcoming summer, in order to help staff receive all of those changes as they start their 25-26 contract. That is gonna be better for communicating with staff. It gets them those changes sooner and then allows us to also recruit competitively for the next school year. So I'll be doing that, hopefully. In number 3, mostly clarifying language that we've added, making sure that it's reflective of employees who are not on this top step at the time of the study, because there's nowhere for them to go. And then we've included clarifying language in A, that it's going to be related work experience determined by the district. That's how we set salary now, as well as years of service, and then that placement criteria. We would not include a retroactive timeline for this because it would be implemented on day 1 of their 25-26 contract.
So you're actually proposing an advanced schedule from what you're proposing. And the reason is you want folks coming into the school year.
Correct.
Okay.
There's also added four, and this was a requirement from Brian Hungerford, the section shall not be subject to the grievance procedure. So just so that that's noted, and what that does is that means that you are agreeing that the district has final like placement as we are going through this process. And it's in our interest to have it done correctly as well, but just to make sure that that's not subject to the grievance.
That makes sense. Also, it's worth noting that some of this is statutory and, subject to our members' rights as far as legal action. This proposal includes, there's no retroactive pay in this proposal. You're just going to get it done essentially by July 1st.
think that if somebody's calendar doesn't start till September first, they're not receiving anything until their contract starts. For 10-month employees.
Understood. Our proposal had a provision that just made clear what you would do for folks hired between ratification and when the study would be complete. What is your intention around what you want to do between ratification and July 1st?
Those people would, so we would not start this study until probably June. Once contracts and everything for staffing next year has already been completed. So that would help out with not having to double track where people are, if someone is hired tomorrow and then, keeping a track of where they would be once the language is done.
Right.
We would just be implementing any new hires based on where their start date is for the next year.
So we need 1 month of potential hires, but there aren't going to be that many hires that month.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we would make sure if somebody was hired under old language versus new language, that would be tracked and completed under the same study.
Okay. Thank you.
It's small function about 10 with the essential worker statement says that is communicating both in the November paycheck and the last November. Would that be something that would not apply to
It would still apply here in the first year.
the first year?
Yeah. Also on G, for the differential, I know I mentioned it in the presentation, but we don't necessarily have a slide built out to include the schedule itself. We do have a proposal that includes a 20 cent. The 20 cents increase for the swing shift, and then you're getting 20 cents for the night shift. So again, the schedules can be forthcoming. If you guys feel you need to see them.
Thank you for that. Questions? This language in A2 is not italicized. I'm assuming that might be the same as our language.
We put the clarifier that they weren't already on the, due to being on the top step, not because of the day they were hired in the year. Because there's two kind of conflicting. We had talked about that last time.
I see.
So we call this.
Yeah.
Okay. And you put years on there.
Right.
Okay.
That does raise a question for me. By putting years on there, is your intention that it would only be applicable for those 2 years and it wouldn't be ongoing past this contract?
Right.
Then it also would not apply to this current year.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're ready to move into, our presentations on 19 and 28. I don't know that I do.
And
Go. You're sharing things.
Did your team have a preference? Do you want to wait for Lee?
let's start with 28.
Okay. And then do you have these?
So, in Article 28, we had a robust discussion about this, and, our team went, during our prep session and, actually went back and listened to the entire discussion that these teams had, previously around Article 28 contracting out. The discussion we had as teams were really great, and they showed us a path forward at some point in the discussion. Brian Hungerford recommended that maybe we could move forward by turning D into two different things. And so upon our review of that conversation, we decided that that was a good idea. That was probably the best direction to go for clarity. We want mutuality with you around how this article is supposed to work. And we want clarity too. We don't want there to be any confusion about how it's supposed to work. As you know, we do have an open grievance on this matter. And we do want the A through C process to be honored, and for both parties to understand when that process is supposed to be used. So in D, we've moved to codify D as, I'll call it, the bucket of work that is special or technical skills not performed by or within the assignment of current employees. And so a lot of this is status quo language. We've changed kind of the flow of it a little bit. Remove the words "a temporary need for" in the first sentence, not because we don't think that's accurate, but just because we didn't think those were necessary words there. So it would read: the district may subcontract work for a special or technical skill not performed by or within the assignment of current employees. I think that's a simple enough sentence and it's easy to understand. And as it was status quo language, the subcontracting will be for a period of temporary need. And then in E, from our conversations, there is work that is performed by or within the assignment of current employees, but you still need to contract out because it is either urgent or mostly because it was urgent. I think some of our conversations there revolved around like a locksmith, where that work might be within the assignment of a classified, but you might be in a place where that person's not working today, or that person's very busy, and I just got to get this door opened in the next hour. We think that that's compelling and reasonable. We wanted to allow for that and to make it clear what the circumstances are that allow for that. So in E, we've gone to codify this, and we should say that this is the part of this article that gets us the most nervous when you're contracting out work that is work that our members do. Obviously, that's where we're going to be pretty protective of our members' work. So what we have in our proposal here says the district may subcontract work for an urgent, unexpected, and temporary need, which ordinarily would be performed by or within the assignment of current employees. We didn't want to use the word emergency because that might mean something, but we felt that urgent and unexpected were things that were in line with the conversation that we had previously. And that it obviously should be temporary, because if it is not temporary, we're wondering why it is not a classified doing it. And then we did think that we would like to review with you regularly, this kind of work. We don't want to be in grievance land with this a lot. We want to be able to review it with you in good faith. We thought that labor management would be the right place to do that. So in F, we're proposing the district and union shall review in labor management the subcontracted work that falls under D and E of the article. And then to be clear, if it's not D or E, then it has to go through the A through C process.
Like, do you have a process in mind for that review? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? What do you guys, is it just kind of ongoing? Does that be like a monthly review of purchase requisitions like I shared with you? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be most helpful to be a regular monthly process, and just because of how many there are, how many contracts there are, it would be helpful for it to be a regular process. We left out any kind of specific time because we're interested in settling this contract and we don't want to get hung up on a specific timeline. I think we're open to working that out collaboratively in our labor management meetings, but I think it would be most functional if it happens regularly. Otherwise, we're gonna get bogged down in a giant review on an annual basis, and I don't think that's really helpful for either party.
And it may be that at first we're looking at it every month, and then the labor management committee says, we're in a good place now, we can do this every other month, and then just quarterly or something like that. We think that we can find agreement on that in labor management without much problem. Certainly, as you go into your caucus to discuss this, we would welcome any questions that you have on this off the table. So please let us know if you have any questions about this. And, we did spend, I feel like, about an hour reviewing the previous video. That conversation was really good. We would encourage you to go back and listen to that as well. It did help us. So thank you.
On our agenda, we also were ready to speak on Article 31. Our team is prepared to TA on status quo language on this article. Unless your team had. What was that? You're not part of the bargaining. Take a seat.
Coming in hot.
48 hours of notice.
Yeah, we need. Ground rules violation. It is.
Yeah, and I had asked to open it because I didn't understand how it worked. And then when we talked about it in our group, then they explained to me how it worked and I said, oh.
Oh.
Thank you for that.
I think our team has some interest maybe the next time that we bargain in beginning our bargaining process a little bit earlier in the year, which this article doesn't prevent us from doing that. But we are interested, generally speaking, in settling our contract earlier.
Yes.
Are we TA and I'm TA?
Okay, do you have a clean copy? I have one, I don't. Okay. Well, we might need, I didn't print any. Okay, so we might need a print.
That at a break.
Okay, we'll sign it.
Can we still celebrate?
Yeah.
I know.
The thing to do.
Thank you. We can celebrate it.
It's a tentative.
Extremely tentative. Are we ready to move forward? Okay, let's. Okay, so for Article 19, it's been a long time since we've spoken about this full article. It's been since November, but for our team, this has been a very important conversation. Oh, okay. This has been a very important conversation and really one of the most important factors for our classified staff this year, and this bargaining process is staff safety. We had a lot of discussion and I mentioned when we came back with our financial priorities that in pulling back some of our financial priorities related to our SEA staff, that we were moving our priorities from our financial piece into our safety and health article, or retaining them in our safety and health article. And so you'll see that reflected here. That's not to say we haven't made some movement in this article, because we did try and hear some of your counter proposal from back in November. But I will start with, it looks like in A1 and 2, we are in agreement. And moving to 3, we had some conversation off the table about the refusal of work in situations where staff believe that they are at a severe risk of physical harm. We do believe that there are staff working in our buildings who face a significant risk of harm. That's an unfortunate reality. And we want to provide staff with a way to move forward and collaborate with administrators to continue in their workplace and yet work in a safe and reasonable way in their workplace. And so our proposal in 3 is designed to meet staff and student need and work collaboratively with administrators. And I'm going to read that out loud. If an employee reasonably believes that work with a specific student may result in serious physical harm, they may call a safety meeting that will A, include, when practical, the student's case manager, primary licensed staff, immediate supervisor, the classified staff member, and a union representative if one is requested. B, be held no more than 2 workdays after the meeting is called. C, review the issues that require additional support to put the student and employee in a successful position. D, formulate a plan of action so sufficient steps are taken to ensure worker safety. And E, be followed by a communication to all employees working with the student pertaining to the plan for worker safety. We did have some communication with Brian Hungerford off the table about redirecting employees to OSHA. And OSHA is not at this time taking complaints about for staff members working with students in public education settings. We hope that they do in the future because we know that this is a concern. But because they're not, we do feel that there needs to be a protection in our contract for our.
We did understand the problems that a refusal for work might entail. We'll do our job in informing our members what their rights are under OSHA. The important thing for us in this piece is to make sure that our members who are in this situation get the support that they need. And we wanted to provide them with some agency here so that they don't feel, as some of them definitely do, completely powerless. We tried to use as soft a language as we could in here. In 3A, the language to include when practical. When practical means that the district kind of gets to decide whether or not having certain people in a meeting is practical or not. So we're handing you some discretion there. We're open to a conversation about how quickly a meeting like this could take place. We think that it should take place right away. We're proposing no more than 2 work days. We certainly hear any interest you have around that, but when one of our members is facing a risk of serious physical harm, we want the district to take that seriously and move very quickly. We think that's a shared interest. There aren't a lot of pieces in this framework here in A3 that are very prescriptive, other than that a meeting has to happen. And we think that when our members are in this sort of situation, the meeting absolutely should happen. And to give our members some agency here was really the key. We're hoping this is a framework that that works for the district, that we can collaborate on reaching a settlement on this article.
If there are no questions on that, moving on to B. In your last counter proposal, we had originally made a proposal that included some timelines around a plan for heat and air quality events that would be provided to the union by May 1st. And in your last counter proposal, the timeline of May 1st was removed, and we had I think a good productive conversation about why that timeline was important to the union. And so we've included that timeline again in our proposal to you, and just to reiterate why that is so important to us. We're not sure of exactly when these heat events are going to occur, but we want to make sure that we have clear communication to our employees when they do. We see this happening kind of in the same way that our inclement weather communication goes out to our employees every year, and we review that with HR before that happens. We just want to make sure that our employees know exactly what to do when they're put in potentially unsafe working environments. They know exactly where their pull-off stations are going to be, and that anything can be addressed before it becomes an emergency. So that is covered in B1A, May 1st, and then in B1C, per Oregon law, the district shall monitor air quality during active air quality events, notify staff of potential hazardous exposure, and provide necessary equipment for staff who will be exposed to potential hazards. We did hear the concern about maintaining, the financial concern about maintaining air filtration systems, so we removed that from our counter proposal. It looks like we are in agreement on C and D. In E2, we have added as much as practical first aid CPR training shall be offered during an employee's regularly scheduled work hours. We believe that's a shared interest here. It looks like F and G we are in agreement on. as well as H.
Yeah, I have a question about.
Yeah.
The 1C. It specifies to Oregon law, the district shall monitor air quality during active air quality events. What does that include? I mean, because there's smog, there's smoke, there's like, allergens.
Yeah.
What is the indicator?
That information is provided by the DEQ on public websites, so we're talking about being aware of the information provided by the public health agencies involved, not the district hiring air sample quality monitor person to monitor. We're talking about monitoring the publicly available information.
Thank you. I just want to make sure the sources were the same. Because somebody having a, allergen induced asthma event is different than something else. So.
Yeah, when we're saying monitor, we're not talking about us like actually performing the science to monitor it. We're talking about being aware of it and then communicating with the employees, like there's this advisory, the heat index is here, or the pollution index is here, or that information is available.
Yeah, we do think this is publicly available information.
There's an air quality index thing where you can get emails whenever things are happening. So with our sports teams, that's what's already happened, is that it will come into the physical trainer. And they'll say, hey, today these are what the expectations are because this is what the air quality says. It already comes out on the mail for to whomever when there's an air quality situation happening.
Is it an alert, like on our website or all employee alert? Is that kind of what you have in mind?
As far as how you would communicate that to
Yeah.
us,
I think we're open to a discussion about how that would happen. Okay, we just want to make sure that employees who are going to be working in our grounds workers have access to PPE if they're going to be outside and there's wildfire smoke or something like that, that they have access to the proper equipment or work indoors.
Essentially, the district should know it's gonna be publicly available information and then disseminate it. If there's huge AQI bump, that's gonna be something that's available on public websites and really helpful to let our folks who are gonna be working outside know, hey, we've got this PPE for you. You're working outside and air quality spiked and so, use it.
And we currently have the flash alert system, but we didn't want to lock the district into a specific provider for the information services, but there would be some ability, we believe, for the district to alert people, hey, it was anticipated to be 85 degrees, but now it's 110. So perhaps come indoors where it's air conditioned.
take more breaks, drink more water, and other things.
We've had a lot of discussion on how to get information to employees and those, so some clarification and process, I think.
Can I have another question? When you say provide the PPE and we're not forcing people, they need to come inside, they need to wear this. It's more about this is what it is. This is the tools that are available. That's it.
That's correct. The OSHA guidelines are pretty clear that the employer should, if the smoke from wildfires is over a certain amount, that N95 masks are to be provided. It doesn't say anything about forcing people to wear them.
We would certainly welcome the district and your ability to say, this is an event that's so serious, we would like you to not work outside. If you think that that's a judgment call that you should make, please make it, we would welcome.
Yeah, but we're not looking at disciplinary or anything like that.
It would be a risk management decision, right?
So
And
go ahead, I'm sorry.
the district would just make the information available and say, we have N95 masks, or it's, that we're implementing our protocol. where you take more breaks and drink more water, or whatever it is that the district has put in place in accordance with the Oregon law.
Yeah, the goal here is compliance with Oregon.
Well, in this case, we do. Or you talk about just like people whose job is to work outside, so like you would refer to groundskeepers, but what about like transportation staff that drive bus? Those kinds of things too,
Yeah, I
where they
would
can
say-
close the window and they have vents.
I mean, they have
But,
a high risk of exposure in an air quality event, so. Again, I would just refer back to the OSHA guidelines, and they're really clear. I mean, we went through them when crafting our proposals, we read through all of them. And we read through all of them over the summer when we had heat and air quality events, and so I think. Again, the goal here is just to make sure that we're compliant with Oregon law when we have these events and that our workers are safe.
And I know in past summers at transportation, we've had spray bottles with water in them and neck cloths for cooling, and advice about fans because the buses all have fans and like roof vents. And so there has been a protocol implemented in transportation to protect people from heat events. Even before the Oregon law came.
No, I just want to make sure, because as I'm just kind of thinking it and stuff. You know, there are gonna be times when school is still in session, so we have to go and just kind of processing how we found.
Yeah, which I think just speaks to why having the plans before the incidents occur would be so helpful. Because then we don't have to think about it in the moment, we're just.
And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say the comprehensive plans, there might be plans set in place, and then May 1st, we're just carrying forward the same plans. It's not recreating new plans every year. It might just be the same set of plans. Yep, we're abiding by the plans we used last year. And just an announcement, done deal. Is that fair?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be improved in the meanwhile as well.
Right, yeah, there could be
Just
modifications.
that date is to say, okay, we're gonna know what's gonna happen on this day, whether it's a change or whether it's the same.
Believe in D, we're in alignment. Uh,
Yeah, I've read through all those. Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
E
great.
through H, we're all good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on D, we had discussed, because those are mostly the physical exams for the bus drivers. And the process of asking sometimes for various reasons, you need more than an hour and a half. And in my experience, asking the immediate supervisor for additional time has been working. And so that's why we're in agreement there. Ideally, yes, it would be like a shorter time frame, but sometimes stuff happens and it's been working, so we're just trying to codify what's currently happening in transportation.
I think we've covered everything to I, so in I, what we're proposing here is, we need our members to get the equipment that they request. I think our members are often in situations where they feel under supported, and some part of that is huge. Another part of that is equipment, and I is attempting to solve the equipment issue here. We understand that there may be some amount of discomfort on the district's behalf around these hard timelines, but we really do need the district to move as quickly as possible when one of our members says they need safety equipment. And so I think most are in alignment, but we've got a new A, B, and C here. In A, the immediate supervisor shall approve or deny a request for PPE in writing as quickly as possible, but in no case longer than 5 workdays. We think that should be sufficient for you to do nearly anything Of course, if it's not possible, that language as quickly as possible applies. If it's not possible, okay. In 4B, employees whose requests are approved shall receive equipment within 2 work days of approval, except in the case of equipment requiring a specialty purchase. Most things should not require a specialty purchase, but if it does, we understand that it might take longer than 2 days. And in C, if the request is denied by the immediate supervisor, employees may appeal to the district risk manager or appropriate district level administrator. The district level administrator shall approve or deny the request in writing as quickly as possible, but again, in no case longer than 5 work days. Some of these things are pretty serious, and our members end up in risk of physical harm if they don't get the equipment that they need. In I-5, employees asked to perform tasks without proper PPE may decline to perform such tasks until equipment has been provided. This is in line with OSHA guidelines. We think this is reasonable. There shouldn't be a situation where someone feels like they can't do the job because they don't have the equipment they need. You know, none of the equipment our members need in order to do their job around safety is really cost burdensome in our view to the district. Do you have any questions about that?
I do. I'm concerned with the, not necessarily for the specialty purchase, it's because we're putting language in the contract when distribution or delivery is out of our hands. Once it's purchased or once it's over, we don't have a say on where we get the things. Yes, I agree that a lot of things don't take up to 2 weeks, but I'm worried about having that language in the contract where it's not up to the district, where we see it or not. What time? And when we see that.
So do we keep equipment on hand that we know staff will need in working with students?
Are we talking about student, maybe you can give me some context here, I apologize, I'm just coming in, so I don't know if you're talking about things like bus riding, or I don't know if you're talking about things like classrooms or. For equipment, what I can tell you about specialized programs in classrooms is that for equipment in the classrooms. Not only do those, like, for example, a specialized program or a non-categorical program that might have a student in there that where maybe somebody needs a mask or gloves or things like that. All of those programs have money to buy that equipment, and we also have that equipment. If we don't have it and they need it, we definitely order it, but I can't, that kind of timeline at that point when we order it. So a good example of that might be Kevlar sleeves. So let's say like, a bus assistant says, the kid's writing me, I need Kevlar sleeves. We might have to order those and they might take a few days to come. I'm not aware of, ever denying safety equipment or any PPE to any staff, ever.
Thank you for that. I think in line with what you're talking about. 4B, essentially, the things you have, if someone requests them, let's get that to them within 2 days. But then a specialty purchase for something else is an exception.
Right. The Kevlar sleeve that you need to order specialty purchase. But if I need to do a diaper change on a student and I ask for gloves to do that, it shouldn't take me 2 weeks to get gloves. That should be immediate. So I think the concern is if a staff member is making a request and it's taking days and days for things, masks, gloves, that should be, basic necessities that are available. Those are the concerns that we're having. Those are the timelines that we're trying to have. But we understand that there's going to be equipment that's going to need to be reviewed and purchased. That's why we have this, requiring a specialty purchase.
So you're capturing that in the special.
Yeah.
But we also feel like there is a broad range of equipment that should be stocked and should be available because these are not unknown needs that our staff have. I think they're very vocal about the needs they have when working with students. And, you know, there should be some level of equipment. You know, our first proposal was that equipment be stocked centrally so that it can be deployed quickly. And we've backed off on that quite a bit. But still, we do believe that when staff ask for this level of support, it should be provided quickly because every day that we wait to provide staff with this support is a day that they're potentially getting.
There are a couple of things we want to prevent. One is when one of our members says, I need something to do my job. And you have it, they shouldn't have to wait a long time, right? The other thing is, if one of our members needs something and they communicate that, and it's taking weeks and weeks to get it because the district doesn't have it, and they go to Amazon and they see that they can get that thing, that $20 thing tomorrow, we would like to prevent that situation too. We don't want our members thinking like, God, in order to be in a position to succeed here, I have to take matters into my own hands and out of my own pocketbook.
And the 2 work days was tied to our courier route, because if there is an item in our district, generally we can get it.
I do want to say, we have had staff that have wanted certain things that said, why can't I just get on Amazon and order it? And that is not the process that we have. Like,
Right.
staff can't just get on Amazon and order willy-nilly what they want. The reason for that is because obviously you consider the context of the whole district that could get out of control very quickly. So we have a process for ordering things. If a classroom runs out of masks, they can reach out to us and we can look other places to see if we can find them to tie them over until new masks are ordered. But it is true that I can understand how that would be frustrating for staff. That can be frustrating for everybody sometimes when you look on Amazon and you have Prime and you can say, oh, I'll get my doorstep tomorrow. But sadly, that's just not how it works. And so we really don't though have control over some of the timelines. And I think to me, that's the biggest thing I see in this piece of it that I would be worried about is just that we want to be able to meet the contractual guidelines for timelines, and we'll always give staff things that we have. I mean, there's zero reason not to do that. We want that, they want that, everybody wants that. It's more of when we do need to order something or something runs out, we need to order more of them. That can be a challenge for timelines for sure.
We certainly would welcome, I mean, if this specific language is causing an issue, we would welcome a counter where you're talking about things you have within a certain timeline versus things that you have to order. We're open to that. But here's the other thing. What we don't want is to be in a situation where you don't have things you know you need, right? And now we're in this place where a member's asking for something that should be pedestrian, that the district should have, and it should come to them quickly, and they're waiting a long time. So understand that intention, but we would welcome the calendar here that makes you more comfortable as far as the timelines.
I have a question, going back to what you said. So you're saying that we should go to our immediate supervisor, they can order things? Is that what
Are you talking about PPE?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, if there are safety pieces that, or really anything that needs to be ordered for a specific classroom, I'm kind of talking in the context of a classroom. But if there are, yeah, there are lots of processes to order things that are needed.
So it doesn't include us from going to our order and say, any order, please,
Of course you can do that, yes, yes. Particularly, if, you know, we usually know when we have students that require a lot of PPE. The ones that kind of take us by surprise sometimes are like if we have a kid on move in or something that we're not expecting. So we have those here and there throughout the year. And sometimes, you know, a kiddo comes and we don't know they're going to need that equipment, and suddenly it's like, oh boy, we're going to need some things for this student. And so typically then we order those things as quickly as we can if we don't already have them. But that's the only time I can think of where it would be like a true surprise, or maybe it's the beginning of the school year and we get a student that we didn't know would be needing a lot of PPE, so we need to do that. But as a general flow of the school year, most of the kids that require staff wearing any sort of protective gear, we know who those kiddos are and we have that equipment, and even if it is depleted, even if the supply is depleted in a classroom, we can usually temporarily try to sort of borrow things until we order it and the next order comes in. So in the time that I've been at Hillsborough, that hasn't typically, I haven't heard of that being a huge problem that people aren't getting what they need, because I've heard it less, but we've always been able to fulfill those. So I think that the PPE shouldn't be too big a problem for folks. The other protective gear that we were able to actually add that we didn't even have access to before was blocking pads for safety care, and that wasn't previously allowed through the safety care system. That wasn't part of it, and now it is. And so everybody getting trained in safety care now has blocking pad training that goes with that, and we have the blocking pads. So those are, every single building has sets of those. So if you are trained to use those blocking pads, you have them available to people who are not trained to use them for safety reasons for students and themselves cannot use those. But if you're trained, so that's a whole new set of protective gear and an option that we have for staff that wasn't previously available this year. And we're still kind of cycling through the training for that. When people sign up for safety care now, it's an automatic.
Question, what if you request those PPEs too? Because I don't recall getting any in our building without purchasing those out of our school funds.
So every building has funds to purchase things like that, particularly with their program hospital.
Covers, I don't think that covers. But still can we request those too?
So you would request probably from the teacher and they would work with the principal on that, but if there was an issue with that happening, then, especially if it were for like not one of our non-categorical classrooms or something like that, or a program classroom, I would definitely work with the student services director on that, and they could also work with the principal on that. Those classrooms get extra funds to buy extra.
Just special individualized classrooms, not students?
Oh, no, so I was mostly thinking of the program classrooms, but since we're doing a lot of inclusion, if we have staff or students in other classrooms, that should all be able to be purchased through the building, and that is true, that is a building purpose, yes, it is. But if for some reason that's not possible, like last year we had a principal say, hey, it's May, I'm running out of gloves, we're gonna be out of gloves in a couple of weeks, and so we figured out how to make the gloves happen. So it needs to start with the building, and then if that's not possible, or if there's some barrier there, we are happy to help problem solve.
Thank you for that conversation. Any other questions before we keep moving? Jay, we're largely aligned, other than we've added some language here that is in line with the law. We want our members to know that they should, when they're being consulted for education plans for students, and those plans are being developed, reviewed, or revised, that legally that should also include them being invited to and compensated for attending meetings regarding BSPs, IEPs, and 504 plans.
Yeah, it's worth noting in our discussion, we talked about how our SEAs are often the ones spending the entire school day one-on-one with the student, and they are the expert on that student's behavior, and their feedback provided on maybe a feedback form is often very limited, sometimes only a few words. And failing to provide a person who is an expert on a student's behavior the opportunity to speak and provide input in a meeting directly related to that student is not in the best interest of the student. They're the one best able to speak to, I think Amanda said it really beautifully, that sometimes they'll actually, be working with the student, and I'm gonna paraphrase what you said, so I'm not gonna say it as good, but staff might be discussing a student's behavior plan, and oh, this student is gonna take a break in the wellness corner, and the SEA who works with them every day might know that going to the wellness corner is actually gonna be a trigger for that student, but because they're not in that meeting to say that voice doesn't get heard. And when we discussed this before, despite the fact that this is just, we pulled this language from our Oregon law, from Senate Bill 756. And yet the conversation we had was, it was removed from your proposal. And I think we are interested in negotiating rights that are provided to our members per Oregon law and not less than that. And we believe that those rights were provided in Oregon law because they're in the best interest of our staff and also in the best interest of our student population. So that's our interest.
Great, you wanna continue?
Yeah, where are we having? On K, we are mostly in agreement. We did have some conversation, I believe back in November, about the interest in a short form for tracking staff injuries. I believe this was absent from your last proposal. I can't remember the conversation prior to November, but I do remember that we had a robust conversation in November about why this was so important to us and why we believe it's important that staff voices are heard. We know our staff are getting injured in our schools on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, and that a lot of that data is not captured in our student reporting or in our incident reporting. And that proper funding for school safety relies on data that is accurately reported. We believe that data will be accurately reported if there's a short form on which we could capture some of these daily or hourly incidents for staff. So we've added 3 back in, or no, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's 5. I skipped right over
Okay,
3, but I'll come back to that.
But it's a similar issue.
It's a similar issue. We also, so that was 5. Skipping back up to 3. We also talked about the need for staff to fill out their own incident reports. We believe it's a shared interest that the incidents that are reported in our system are reported accurately and they're reported by the staff who experience or witness them. We spoke about how oftentimes licensed staff or administrators are filling out reports on behalf of classified staff for instances that they themselves were not involved in. And that can lead to inaccurate reporting. We don't want that to happen. So we've added 3 back in, and we've clarified our language a bit from our initial proposal. So 3 says employees will only fill out their own reports for instance they were involved in.
Some interesting issues have come up in our discussions and investigation around this, and one is just like the form itself. The reason for the short form is that the form itself is a hurdle. And so some things that are kind of not worth it and that is in someone's head are getting passed over. We don't want them to get passed over. We'll take some discussions about what the form requires off the contract and into labor management committee. Some of those things are like, hey, why do I have to put in all of my contact information every time? Right? And it's like required fields. So we'll have some conversations with you about that, but we think it's a shared interest that the people who are involved are the ones who fill out the reports. And that the report itself not be a hurdle that is suppressing reportage.
And to the point about Kevlar sleeves, if we're tracking how many staff are bitten, for example, that might inform how many Kevlar sleeves need to be available on the regular, because then you would know this many people were bitten, this many bites against staff took place. Where that is tracked pretty heavily against students, like we have pretty good reporting on injuries to students. Knowing what staff might need for PPE might come from that data that could be kept in-house site by site, you know, but then available for district sharing of information.
We talked about the amount of time it takes to fill out the incident report that's provided by Vector Training, I think is the provider that tracks those and collects that data. It takes, especially the first time when you're figuring out how to fill it out, at least 15 minutes. And so if we're doing one of those for every single time a student bites us, if somebody's in a classroom and they receive a bite 15 times in a day, that's a lot of time spent filling out that report time after time after time. And we'd really rather have a short form that we can provide the information to the district. This happened this many times, that really only takes like 30 seconds to fill out. This is where I was, this is who it was, this is what time of day it was, this is what happened. Obviously for more serious incidents, for a injury requiring more than first aid, you know, broken bones, things thrown across the room. Obviously you want to fill out the longer form, but we need something that's quicker and easier to fill out so that we can just say, hey, this happened and then it happened again and then it happened again.
In our previous proposals, we talked about granting our members the necessary time, and that path was a little too prescriptive for the district. We heard you there. So going the other direction seems smart to us. I think it's a shared interest. Let's bring down the amount of time it takes to do a report. That's more time that can be spent with students. And then also not creating a system that suppresses reportage.
So I have a question about this whole thing. Is it only student cost incidents that you're interested in gathering here? You seem really focused on that. I mean, there's injuries of all types all across the district that may not require medical care, that may be job specific, for example, kitchen or whatever. So is your interest here that narrow focus on student cause incidents?
I'll say that we're focused there because we think that happens a lot. The other incidents may be a situation. So a short form may be used in a situation like in a kitchen where something is causing a workflow problem that might result in injury. It keeps coming up and it hasn't resulted in injury, but it's something that someone wants to communicate. I think a short form is great for that too. It means it will take less time for the person to report it, so they're more likely to report it. And if it's an ongoing problem, it's going to potentially prevent injury from happening. Whereas the long form might not be something they go and they do. It hasn't caused a problem. It's just annoying, and then it does eventually cause an injury, right? So we could foresee it being used in some other situations too, for sure. I hope that answers.
For example,
Yeah, just
particularly,
all of the discussion has been really student focused, and so that is a much narrower scope of reporting and support. I mean, we're talking about across all positions, all classifications, and what data, and the time spent, frankly, on stopping and reporting, stopping, however short the form is.
Sure.
we're also talking about maybe a particularly slippery step or, a rug that's, people are tripping over every day. These are things that we think that data should be collected. It shouldn't take somebody breaking their leg or getting a concussion before somebody's aware that this is an ongoing safety issue.
Doesn't the safety committee kind of meet that purpose? Are you guys able to participate, aware of and participating in a site-based safety committee where things like that may be addressed or slippery?
There's a
kitchen
safety.
floor?
I'm not aware of there being a safety.
And if there is, I don't know how often they have their meetings. I mean, I don't know how, when was the last time facilities have safety?
And is there a process for communicating with that?
I know with the TSS app, they have a very active one. Safety committee,
We
but I don't
can
know. how
provide
active
more, I
that
mean,
is.
and that's an OSHA requirement too, to have safety committees at each site, and they have an emergency response plan, and they have periodic meetings and minutes, and they track incidents. So this kind of feels parallel to that in a way. But, so I'm wondering if there's not, more that we can share about.
Certainly, like, what we're imagining is, data collection that goes to the safety committee, you know. Yet this short form isn't about, it isn't about our members having to report something even 30 seconds every time something happens. I walk over that step 100 times in a day, I'm not gonna fill out the report 100 times. However, it might be something where I'm like, somebody should know about this, right? I'm gonna fill out the report once, it hasn't caused an injury, so it doesn't require a longer form, but it is good communication to be like, somebody should know. And then that information could easily go to safety committee to be discussed and like, oh, we've got to figure out this step, you know? There are things that safety committees aren't necessarily going to know about because of suppressed reporting. We want to make sure that that's just not the case. We certainly want the environment for our members to be such that they can report things that they think are important to report, even if they haven't caused an injury. We don't imagine our members are going to be spending a ton of time on a short form all the time, reporting every last little thing, but we want them to have some outlet that is fast to report things that don't cause injury.
So for origination purposes, do you see this being an anonymous forum?
No,
I don't think that we
No.
imagined that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, do you imagine that there's a workflow that would go to the immediate supervisor of this person?
I think we're talking about a lot of like specifics about this, and get back to the original question, Michelle, I think we have a lot of concerns about the safety of our SEAs. We have some concerns about the safety of our other workers too. I think what we would see on a form like this is a lot of concerns, a lot of safety concerns from our SEAs and some concerns from some of our. We are interested in all of that feedback because we're interested in representing all of our members. But we have a specific interest, both here within our district and at the state level, in advocating for the safety of our special education assistants, because we believe we can do more to protect the safety of our workers. And in order to do that, we need data to advocate for them at the state.
Would it be something that the union leadership would be interested in developing and providing to, like, does it need to be a district mechanism?
I think it needs to be both. I think that our district leadership should be interested in this information as well. I think our school board should be interested in this information as well. I think we should all be interested in the safety of our staff. And I think we should all be interested in accurate reporting. So yes, we would be, I mean, yes, we could develop this form, but I do think that as leaders, we should all be interested in what's going on with our staff.
Certainly, and I'm not denying that, I'm just, in my mind and experience, there are some parallel processes that can be tuned up a little bit in alignment with this, but if you're truly seeking more independent access for memberships to directly give data to you, like that might make sense for that vehicle to come from union leadership. I don't know if that's the answer, I'm just wondering, like, there are already some things in place at the district level. Is this something that's separate and beyond that?
I think what we're trying to say is the things that are in place at the district level aren't working because what the information that you're getting is incomplete. Staff are not feeling like the injuries that they're receiving are heard by your leadership.
What happens is. I can speak for myself, when I wrote my first Jason student. I took time to fill out the report, which was very tedious. And then it went on to the stratosphere. I had nothing back from my contacted me to say, hey, let's go over this report and what took place. And a lot of our SEAs, I think, would be more apt to fill out those forms, let you know that we have some issues. If there was some feedback to that period. We don't.
Is it okay if we ask Elaine to kind of talk about maybe what the protocol is for SEAs who are injured? Like what is,
It's the regular building protocol for any injury. There's not a special protocol for it. So it's if any employee.
We fill out that.
Sure.
Fill out the form. It's on the computer. And it goes, and it's supposed to go to.
I believe she goes to Mary Beth. Yeah, I believe that, but it's not a different process than for anybody who were to get an injury. It's a standard process. So I believe those forms that come to, they go to the risk manager, and then she goes from there because she needs to work with the
You have access to workers' comp?
I'm sorry,
Did you have access to workers' comp?
no, I guess.
Okay.
I will say his experience is the same as how the safety team works. Every time I hear somebody reported something to our safety team, they continually come back and tell me, I've reported this and nothing has happened about it. So the actions that we are taking as a staff are not being met even through the processes that we already have in place. So I haven't reported things to the safety team because what I've heard from everybody else who reports something to the safety team is nothing ever happens. So unless I can make a report of whatever it is, we're missing a rug or there's some problem with, people are coming in off the courtyard and it's all wet. We don't have anything to stop that. So people are going to slip and break their head open. I'll put that in on a help desk ticket and say, hey, we need some help here and let somebody else fight it off. But the avenue of going to our safety team has never been effective for anybody that I've worked with. They've never said, hey, I went there, but then this got changed. It's always been, nobody does anything about it. They talk about it and then it just lays there.
So you talked about the ticketing process. Do you guys see, and this is a potential component of ticketing as far as tracking? I'm just trying.
I don't know that any SEA would ever write a help desk ticket. I don't think that's if they don't have a device, first off. And then secondly, they don't have the time to figure out how to put in a help desk and who to tell and where to go. Like, I do it because I had a boss who was saying, put in the desk ticket, and so I would do it, but in general, that's not a classified thing that gets done for regular staff. It's an admin support staff, I think.
I could just ask a clarifying question. I'm just writing myself some notes here and just kind of thinking about this process. So correct me if I'm wrong. What you're asking would be helpful is like, just gonna get layman's terms here. Okay, there's a Google form separate, let's just say from, like if there's an injury that requires medical attention, then you're gonna go down that road. Safety form this way, and then maybe it's this form is a way to bring it to the immediate attention of a supervisor and the safety team. Then they can coordinate, hey, does this need to go up the food chain to like, is this a work ticket? Facilities needs to come and fix something versus every time we spread the de-icer, we miss this step because somebody spread the de-icer.
I think you described it pretty well.
That's what.
I mean, I think you're describing it pretty well, and there's a data trail too. You can think about these things in terms of, maybe there's a transportation assistant who's working with a kiddo who has some new behavior. That new behavior may escalate to the point of an injury. But they're seeing it on a bus. And so for them to have a short form to be able to report it, and then that potentially gets triaged, like you just described, that could go to a case manager. Hey, this is something new that they should consider. It also allows us to say, when we're working with our member and our member says, I talked to my manager about this and kind of nothing's happening. Have you done the short form? Do the short form, let's get the information to the right places and make sure that it's there. Because when we do an information request, it's not like we can ask for how many times did this member go to their immediate supervisor to talk about this. That would come back with nothing responsive, right? So we want to be able to have the data and to see it in the kind of holistic way. What you described, Carol, makes a ton of sense as far as how the district would handle that information and triage it appropriately. You love that.
If we're looking for accurate information, then we're looking for either doing the short form or doing the other. It's not like, let's do both forms and see which one.
To be clear, right now, there are injuries that are underreported. We will not feel particularly great about the data that you're collecting until some part of that data are things that was a little too small even to report on a short form, right? So it's the most egregious things that are getting reported right now. We know reportage is suppressed. We need to work collaboratively with you to make sure that that condition is alleviated so that you're getting the best, most holistic data. We know that you want to react to the slippery step for the kiddo as they age, having new behaviors that need to potentially get addressed with a plan, right? So we have to be able to facilitate that communication and do it in a way that isn't onerous on the time that it takes for our members to do it, because we want to preserve that time for working with students.
And I can speak to Michelle's comment that like lots of injuries could happen and we don't want admin and safety teams to have to go, oh, this person's reporting every hangnail or everything, like if it's like, oh, well, I bit my cheek while I was eating my lunch and I better tell them because that happened at work. But I don't want to say what members could or could not report, but I'm just saying like, if it is relevant to the job and we're not able to tell you, then it would also, to Michelle's other point, be awkward if the union had all that information and the district did not. I feel like there is a shared interest to have that data so that the safety teams can make plans accordingly and have that available at you.
Which, to be clear, is the position we're in. Because I'm having conversations regularly with members who are hurt on the job, who are not reporting it because of how cumbersome our reporting system is. And that's what we're trying to.
And if it's something that needs to go from the short form to the long form, whoever's receiving the short form can say, hey, we see this is important. We need you to go ahead and fill out the long form and give them the time at that point. But not reporting it at all is the problem. So,
And that is an excellent point. With a short form, you are going to end up with things that should have been on the long form. And that's fantastic. We want to know that. We all want to know that, right? Because that's a person who is under time duress and something serious is happening, right? So that's where the suppression of this information is happening, and having a short form will show you those things. It will show us those things and we can work together to fix them.
And if I could speak as an SCA, filling out that big form when something big happens is really important. But it's also as important to be able to report those little tiny things that happen every single day, because it's almost like death by a million cuts. And if I can show you in a short form, it's easy for me to fill out. You can see where there is a pattern of incidents that are happening that may not seem so big to you. But every day when it happens, it's really big too.
And that is another amazing example, because if someone is getting pushed in a specific way 20 times a day, no one time is creating an injury that is going to make them go fill out a report. But if that happens day after day after day, it is going to cause a repetitive motion injury, right? And that is one of the hardest things to get workers' compensation for. So having some way of understanding that that's happening over and over and over again is very, very helpful. Thank you. The conversations we've had with our members about these issues obviously make us very passionate about it. We want very, very much to put our members in a position to succeed and be safe and serve students. Thank you. Oh. We had previously a fairly robust framework in L around an injury due to student behavior. In our previous discussion, some pieces of our previous proposals were too challenging for the district. We've scaled back, and the last conversation we had around what happens after an injury due to student behavior, much of what was discussed at the table was about the district allows our members to get a little bit of time to kind of debrief themselves. So we reshaped a piece of our proposal into L2. After an event during which an employee suffers an injury as a result of a student's behavior, the employee shall be provided appropriate time to recover and will not be required to work with the individual who caused the injury until such time as the employee and the immediate supervisor have met and conferred. We kind of feel like this language is kind of the minimal needs for our members, and it is in line with the conversations that we've had at the table previously. What is appropriate time? Certainly we can have a discussion about that. I think that it's pretty clear on one side or the other when it's not provided or when it definitely is. The gray areas are ones where we would want to work with you, potentially bring the issue to a safety committee or to an LMC. And in L3, if personal property damage occurs due to a student's behavior, the district shall reimburse employees for the personal property loss or damage. In a previous conversation, Michelle, you had brought up a specific policy of the district. We went and reviewed that policy, and while the district may be reimbursing employees for that personal property loss under the policy is not prescriptive to require that. And so we do want L3 so our members understand that if this happens, that the district is going to reimburse them for personal property loss or damage. We don't mind a reference to the policy, but we didn't think the policy really, it didn't say this, it wasn't this prescriptive for sure.
It's also, our employees look to our contract to find information like that and may not be aware of the policy, and so we wanted to make sure that information is here in one place for them to find, but yeah, we would be happy to include a reference to the policy.
Yeah, we had previously proposed an amount, we've taken that out.
Right.
We think you're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and fairly appropriately. So we want our members to know that that's gonna happen.
And we are in agreement, and then coming on to O. Back to the last proposal. We have just there was a portion of our proposal that we didn't get to discuss last time we met, that we've added back in here. So we did talk a bit about training. We've made just a couple adjustments to your proposal on training. That required training for public safety office shall be on paid time, and if not on paid time under extended contracts. And then also that per Article 21, campus monitors and security control monitors may request professional development funds for additional training. We heard the discussion about requesting additional training through labor management, and we're willing to go that route, and work together with Lisa on picking up that. For O2, one concern that we didn't cover in our last conversation, was the time to do reporting for our campus monitors. So our campus monitors do need to do a certain level of reporting for their jobs. And, they are typically in student contact time for the majority of their day, which leaves them no time to complete these reports, which are important. So back to our ongoing conversation about accurate reporting. For safety, we have a proposal here allowing them appropriate time. And I'll just read it out. Immediate supervisors shall ensure that security patrol monitors and campus monitors are provided with non-student contact time to input documentation for all safety and security concerns into the appropriate reporting system. This time will be provided during the shift in which an incident occurs. The immediate supervisor may approve extended contracts to complete documentation if additional time is needed. It's worth noting here, we had some conversation with our campus monitors about how much time they felt they needed, and it varied site to site and day to day. So originally we had specific time that we were looking for here. And based on those conversations, we felt that really supervisors should be working with their campus monitors and asking them how much time they needed per day. But we know that they do need time and that they don't feel like they're currently getting enough time. And this is important. Anybody want to add anything to that? It's more conversation.
Thank you. We are 45 minutes behind. Who knew that safety and health would put us, wait a second. So, we're scheduled for caucus and lunch until 12:30. I think let's stick to the plan. We'll let you know if we need a little bit more time.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll say that in fairness, like that interest is compelling.
Thank you so much for your help with printing. Yeah.
We're going to pass out both insurance
Simultaneously.
and compensation.
As
This
a
is a package proposal. We'll keep it as a package.
I was right. That might not work out very well with how I math that.
Well, here, we'll just go
It's gonna be
slowly.
fine. It'll all work out in the end.
Are they all in one file?
It's,
They're-
they'll all make it.
Just look for 10 and 12.
Yeah, just take one of each, potentially.
If we stick with one another and we give each other some grace, we will get through this.
You're welcome. Is this that team building exercise?
This whole thing, yes.
I'm gonna start talking through 12. Yeah. I'm waiting for them all to get around and make sure you have both.
Watch it play out.
I would have. Such a true. I should. Maybe I moved that place, like progressive or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can see what people are here. So everybody got everything. So what we've done with this package, I'll say just to frame this entire package, it was a very challenging conversation for us. We are interested in a settlement. We worked very hard to move as quickly as we could to your position in the hopes of reaching a settlement on this contract today, at least in the terms that were in our court that we had some control over. In the hopes of doing that, in Article 12, we really appreciate your offer. The only change we've made to Article 12 insurance is to make the first year of health insurance contributions not subject to a retro payment. We feel like that is something that we could give up that hopefully provides the district with a little bit of monetary relief. I'll move to Article 10 compensation. Our last proposal was 3.5% in the first year, which the two parties have been aligned on, 5% and 6.5%. Again, in the hopes of a settlement, we've moved as quickly as we could within the framework of this package to go to 3.5%, 5%, and 5%. However, in A2, we would like language, we're accepting your language around due to being at the top step of the salary schedule. But we would like this retention bonus to be a yearly thing. We're happy to bargain it with you again. The next time for a successor agreement, you could certainly propose eliminating it then. But we would like it to be a yearly thing. We would like it to apply to the first year. This one is a priority for us. We don't want our members who are only going to be getting a cost of living adjustment to miss out on a retention bonus should they be topped out. Moving on, we'll go to G in the differential. Again, we appreciate the district's last proposal on this. We do think that after many, many years, increasing the differential is both good for our members, but also good for your retention and your ability to recruit and fill open positions. So on the movement from 20 to 40 cents on the swing shift, we're accepting that. We would like night shift to be equitable to that increase. That was 100% increase. We also understand the district's finances and some of the challenges around the first year. So the way we've written this is to move to the 80 cents that you're proposing in the first year. In the second year, move to $1, and in the third year, come to parity and equity with the swing shift increase, so that it would be $1.20. Any questions so far? Moving to H in salary placement, we are largely in agreement. We've made some changes here. The first change was that we just added some language in 3A that this would be effective, the new placement criteria effective July 1st, 2020. Just so that that's clear, we understood that to be your intention with your proposal. Your proposal included that the section shall not be subject to the grievance procedure. We're not clear if your intention was for all of H to be not subject to the grievance procedure, or just H3. We have moved it from H4 to H3C so that this piece only applies H3. I'll say that this is a huge challenge for us. When we agree to something not being subject to grievance, what that means for us is it might not really exist. How do we enforce it if we can't file a grievance on it? When it comes to this, we're literally going to have to send our members to BOLI should you mess this up. I'll say that this piece specifically, well, all of these pieces in a package, we're only agreeing to this in terms of the GSI, the COLAs that we have proposed, we're moving as quickly as we can to your position. And in this, we understand that you don't want a ton of grievances as you go through replacing folks for the wage and equity study. While we share some of your economic woes and are in that boat with you, also this particular piece about how you as a district are not in compliance with the law about Oregon's equal pay requirements is not on us. It is absolutely on the district to fix this problem and to pay for fixing this problem. We do not believe that classified should have to pay for this mistake. And we're also feeling a little burnt because we've had to go to the table with you multiple times to talk about side letters so that you could hire specific categories of folks. And every time we have advocated for a position that would shield the district from equal pay law claims. And every time we were rebuffed. So again, we'd like to say that if the district is having a hard time paying for this piece of replacing folks, we would encourage you to go to the voters with a local option levy. We would support that. We would, as a union, tell voters to support that. We believe that you would have support from the public to do that. Any questions on this piece? I'd like to ask on H3. In the framework of this package, where we're agreeing to not file grievances on the replacement of folks for equal pay. We would just love to know kind of what you would like to do if someone comes to us and says, I think this was done wrong. We have some assumptions there, but we don't want to just be making assumptions. We would assume that we would bring that to you in good faith and you would investigate it in good faith. Yeah, can you speak to some of that a little bit, Hannah?
Yeah, I would say we follow similar processes to what we do with setting any salary. Is that, you know, if a new hire, all my contact information is provided to them as they enter employment with the district. And if they have questions, I've helped walk them through the process. If they have additional information, we take that into consideration if something was missing. And so I would assume that that would be something that we would bring forward in this process too, of reviewing things. We always want to make sure that somebody's placed correctly. That's always going to be our intention. So I think we would go through those same processes.
Thank you for that. I think that was much in line with kind of what we were assuming, and I appreciate that approach for sure. I believe those are all of our changes on this article. I'm checking the last page. Yeah.
We didn't have the November paycheck language italicized in our last draft, so I italicized it, but I think we were in agreement on it. Prior. Under the essential worker statement.
Question on A change. Is that a change in language to being effective July 1, or is it just not italicized?
That was a change. We added that just for clarity.
We believe that was the intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, then we would welcome counter proposal.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because it should be the new placement criteria that is in H2, not something else. Yeah.
So that's not implying that necessarily the entire study needs to be done. Because it would still be effective on their first day of contract. Of their specific contract. And we get people that start in August and September. Those people are going to be a little further back in the project versus 12-monthers who their contract starts on July 1.
No,
Just wanna
that's
make
right.
sure The timeline isn't shrinking a little bit. on
It
this.
refers to the placement criteria that is effective July 1, not their specific circumstance as an individual.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, I don't wanna have a
No, that's a good,
project, but.
no, that's a great question. Clarity there is necessary, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, 128, we went ahead and accepted most of your language here. The only difference that we have is E. The district may subcontract work for an urgent, unexpected, or temporary need, which ordinarily will be performed by or within the assignment for any employees. The change there is the and the or. And with your proposal, it would have to be a qualifier of those three things. And we feel like we need some leeway on how to help to make sure that we get the students what they need. So if it gets one of those things, if it's urgent, or if it's unexpected, or if it's temporary, we can go ahead and do the contract out and then bring it to them. That we need to deliver management and look at that data and see what that data says, whether it's a continuous thing that we need to look further into, or if this is just helping.
Understood. I'd love to come up with some examples of situations. I mean, I think we've talked about some of them that might just be urgent or just unexpected. I think the one that we would be the most concerned with is just temporary. Our members do a lot of different work. What sorts of circumstances would you invoke E that are just temporary, but they're not urgent or unexpected?
We can think about, like an event, it's the way to, export. We can go ahead and say, yes, there needs to be a cap, there needs to be a contract out to do the skit. But we don't know if that same need is gonna be there next month or next year. Even though we are thinking that there might be, because there has been, we don't know the amount of it, or the exact need that there will be. So it could be temporary for however long that student might be. And not necessarily urgent or unexpected. We need to be urgent, but
Okay, that's a good example. Any questions?
So question, going to your example of, temporary but not urgent or unexpected with McKinney Vento transportation, just as an example, how long, I mean, if a student is being transported for 2 years? Is that still temporary? Are there some walls around what that means, or is it just?
I
Forever.
think that would be something that it could be defined in labor management. It's like, okay, this is the paperwork that we have for the McKinney-Vento, but it's only gonna be for 6 months. Or whatever that is, and it would be like, okay, yeah, that would be temporary.
And sometimes Tiffany, like especially with DHS placement kids, they may come to me and say, okay, this is a temporary placement. But anymore, I have seen, go either way. It could be extended for another 2 weeks. They could say 6 months. It's McKinney-Vento and DHS students are very fluid, right? They're moving. So there's a lot of odd things.
And so in this example, it wouldn't really work to take care of it under section A, because that's a very long, complex process. And those students do sort of have an urgent need for transportation today so they can get to school. Okay. So in that case, it really is sort of urgent and somewhat temporary,
But not always.
but not always. I mean, yeah,
You expect to get those
you
students.
expect to get them. I see that. Okay.
Yeah, right, yeah,
But even when the expectation was there, can't plan.
Yeah.
Right.
The need is.
right. I'm sure we'll have some conversations about this. We might have more questions for you. If we do, we'll be keen to ask and send this to you as quickly as we can.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
So, are there any other examples of temporary, and part of the reason I asked this for McKinney-Vento, a student can be pretty readily added temporarily to existing routes for a week or a month, and so that could be handled fairly readily within, unless it's like Astoria or something. Are there any other examples of temporary that you might have discussed in your caucus? Just to expand me beyond, I'm now stuck on McKinney-Vento.
One thing that Ray and I were just talking about, like if we get a cold spell and you have multiple schools with frozen pipes. Would you bring in? Yeah. They bring in a temporary plumbers to help fix pipes.
I would say that's also urgent. And unexpected.
Yeah.
That would be all.
Well, that would be all of them, but yeah, you're right, that would be another temporary.
Does that also fall under custodial as well?
Yeah, we have some, like, we have one at Lincoln Street right now, it's temporary. It's there for, this person's there for the rest of the school year.
Is it temporary
wasn't really
through
urgent.
ESS?
Wasn't-
Is it temporary through ESS, or is it like?
No, it's temporary hire.
But not an outside hiring, like
Not a
outside,
contractor.
not a contract.
Yeah, we hired them as an agency. Yeah, we do have some contractors. Just working, whatever's available. Kind of like something. Don't have anybody long term.
We were talking about the moss removal in the parking lot.
That's another job, yeah. Job's definitely way too big for the custodian to go and do it all, so. And the grounds crews didn't have the time to go and do it, so. They reached out, hired a contractor, they came out, spent a few days. Did the job.
Okay, that's another, thank you, that helped.
Another potential might be a grant. You know, like a small neighborhood grant that, for example, purchase and install a shed. With something like that, that's maybe not viewed as urgent or unexpected, but it's still like this temporary bubble in activity where it's not putting our staff who are already fully committed to work orders do this extra thing. So that would be something that wouldn't be sustained over time, but not necessarily unexpected.
I would think that would fall
Yeah.
under D, because we don't do ground up construction generally. We generally contract those things out. I guess that's why I'm thinking most of the examples that you're coming up with, which you're saying is only temporary. They fit into other categories, like it's not something that we would normally even do, or it's not. It is actually urgent, like frozen pipes, that's urgent. a safety issue like moss in the parking lot that's too big for us to handle, that's like unexpected, sort of urgent.
Maybe the overarching, review and labor management is gonna bring this forward again and again and again. And that's a new mechanism that I think leadership will just be talking about more on a regular basis. So getting super hyper fixated on urgent, unexpected, or temporary for this purpose, I mean, I think that a steady review, that's a commitment from both parties to monitor.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, and talk about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Get to
I
the
think that
message.
process will be healthy probably for both parties, because
Yeah.
we'll probably together reveal some things that may be, I mean, we would love to help you reveal some cost savings, obviously. One example of this that's come up for us in our investigation that we should talk about is around graduation and the need for security then. I think our members in public safety were feeling like they weren't offered work that they could have been offered around graduation, and an outside firm was hired. That is a situation that is temporary, definitely is not urgent or unexpected. That could have been planned for. I think that's one where we would love the district to have, as much as possible, used our members to do that work. And then if the need is like, bursting out from the capacity that our members have, obviously that's a temporary thing. Where's the district around that specific instance?
I think that would be looking at the data. And seeing where the schedule was, where everything is at, so that would be something that I would think about to the availability of the staff, members. And that would be covered by it.
I think we've heard all along some tension around staff being able to take time off. And so when we are, I guess, like Martha said, we just need to be very planful of events like that. It is temporary in structure. So if you have a security person who's off on vacation or ill or whatever, that exacerbates the need that maybe that was unexpected, right? So I think we've heard both about overburdening the employees and offering them work. So I think that's something that we just probably need to continue to work on.
Now speaking about that, graduations, historically, security, our public safety department has always covered it for the last 8 years. We covered every graduation. And this past year, we weren't even aware of it. What's going on? We have been asked to work overtime. We always get offered overtime at graduation. And then we were being told that they're using a third party agency that they've had issues with in the past, like sleeping on the job. So we were both like confused on why were they contracted out if those people weren't capable of doing it as we have the last 7 years. So I think that's where the frustration for myself, my coworkers this year.
Was that communicated out through your leadership?
Yes. Okay. Yep, and we were told that they were that we were gonna take the time off, and we came up with a verbal agreement saying, hey, we're not gonna take any time off right away. If I'm working overtime, I'm with it. And I'm not planning on taking time off in the same week. So, I mean, we've had a verbal agreement this year, and they said they really did bring it top to us and everything else, so hopefully going forward, it'll be a smoother thing, but last year it was not communicated. Nobody was offered any extra time. It was just, we're using a third party. And then we were told we had to go check up on the company to make sure they don't sleep and make sure they're there. That's what we so, but hopefully moving forward, it's a better process and better communication.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping that. And that's. Checking.
Any other questions? Thank you.
In Article 19, safety. I think we are both in agreement that we want the safest workplace for our staff and we want everybody to feel safe. So we're trying to capture some of your words and put them together with others. So as I go through it, anybody jump in and help me out. We capture your number 3, A3, some of your words into 1. So we added, if any employee was reasonably believes that the work may result in serious physical harm, they may request a meeting to discuss a plan to ensure work safety. As we were reading your proposal, a few things came up. One was it with a specific student. We felt that that was subjective language and that some people will speak, we all speak from our lived experience. And somebody could say, very drastically, you know, I feel like that kid is going to be harmful versus somebody who's really comfortable working with a kid that is jumping around. So we didn't want that to influence the asking of the meeting. We wanted to go ahead and keep it in general for work versus the student. So have it separated that way. Also, if we have it on if we're talking about students, there might be some information in there that is student. So we can have the union being in there. And that is where A, and a representative will be if one is requested. So if we're discussing students verbal information, that doesn't necessarily you cannot be there for that unless it's disciplinary. That would require disciplinary. So we try to capture your 3 in that sentence right there. And we also wanted to make sure that it's not only SCAs, that if they feel like if their work was unsafe, that it's anybody. For any reason that they feel like the work may something serious, or to come in and discuss it with their immediate. Any questions about that?
What happens if a member requests a meeting like this under A1 and their supervisor says, you know, we don't have the time for that?
You know, that has not been the experience that we've had in terms of there has been a request that we know of. The meeting has happened. So that's why we're doing it.
What timeline has your experience been with these meetings happen?
When there's a harmful within a few days, if not immediately.
And what is a reasonable timeline in your opinion? If a person considers themselves to be at risk of severe physical, like potential hospitalization in their workplace.
Oh, so it has to be immediate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I am in that position and I request a safety meeting, then it is your position that I would have an immediate meeting to address me.
I believe that the immediate supervisor at the moment will take care of the situation and distributing the work as it were to be distributed and taking care of the immediate emergency. If that makes sense. Like if I need to drive you to the hospital, if you need to call 911, there has to be some protocol, safety plan, whatever it is, the job, facilities. We need to take care of you. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll take care of that.
Who is attending these meetings? Who's in charge of scheduling meetings?
That will be the staff member working with their immediate supervisor.
And it will just be the immediate supervisor.
No, the immediate supervisor, the staff member will work with the immediate supervisor on what that looks like in order to discuss a plan to ensure work safety. Okay. So if the staff member says, can we go ahead and have if it's a facilities person, can we go ahead and have this other person in this meeting, they can go ahead and request that. If it's a SCA, can we go ahead and have the case manager be in the meeting, they can go ahead and request that, but that's something that the staff member will work with the immediate supervisor.
But just from a building perspective, your proposed language talked about a safety meeting. And we kind of talked about, well, that might end up resulting in like a behavior support plan meeting or a revision of one, or maybe it's a safety plan. It could just be a staffing on a student not identified. And that could be in middle school, you might have 7 teachers and plus in elementary, you might have just a couple. If Margaret works one-on-one with a student and that's the student that's happening with, we might need to connect and maybe start getting support from a new teacher and I need to connect. So just as we're talking about how it varies, I can just see any which way that might go to make sure that students. So we talked a lot about sort of like safety meeting language and
So you're saying as a supervisor, it would be your intention to have this meeting with Margaret and then do that follow-up work? Or you're saying there would be so many people involved in our language that it would be too cumbersome to
no,
conduct that?
I'm saying it would really depend on that situation and that student, if that student's identified as a student not receiving special education services, who's on a behavior support plan, we might call a revision to the behavior support plan because that's what needs to change so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah,
All the way to, like just, a student who isn't identified as needing a 504 or special education or doesn't have a case manager of any sort, that's gonna look different. Does that make sense? Like, we're running into this year, not in a safety way, but we moved away from teaming, so students aren't on teams of teachers. So we're talking through, well, how do we do staffing for the kids that 7 teachers have and they're not going to do very well in the classes, whereas we had a different like team previously. So we're looking at different avenues. Yeah.
so what's the follow-up for the adult who's working for that student then? What's the outcome for that? If they've come to you and said, I'm worried about my safety, I need to meet with you. Walk me through your language, what's the follow-up for that person? And we had really clear steps, and this is one sentence, so you can just walk me through like what you see that looking like, that would really help me.
Yeah, I think that what we're trying to capture here is the different scenarios. The different one-on-one, the different staff members, not only SCAs. So the intention is to ensure that you have an ensure work safety space. And work that with really good supervisor. If that looks like we're meeting right now, and that means that by the end of the meeting, we decide, okay, the next steps are A, B, and C. Then we want to make sure that A, B, and C happens, right? But it is so fast. We have so many staff members in different positions. And even within the SCAs, the examples are so different. Or even if it's an EA, it's so different that it has to start with the immediate supervisor, and then at that point, what does that look like? What does the plan look like? So at the end of the meeting, here's the plan. And then that plan will look different for different situations.
Any other questions?
Would this be a fair restatement of the conversation, if I'm understanding correctly? If an employee reasonably believes that their work may result in serious physical harm, they may work with their immediate supervisor to hold a meeting to discuss a plan to ensure work safety. Instead of request a meeting, they may work with their immediate supervisor to hold a meeting to discuss a plan. Is that the intent of your language? Is that fair?
So,
And in that direction?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what David's looking for is like, I know when we go into our caucus, this word request is gonna be thing, we want, some of these things around how many people need to be in the meeting and how quickly, we can kind of work with ambiguous or missing language. But we, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we go to B.
Yeah, thank you for your patience there. Yeah, I think we're okay to.
Thank you. We go to B. We are okay with adding May 1st to that sentence, so we kept B as just one. So we combined the May 1st and we added to the first sentence. The district will provide, that was 2. So B and C, 1B and C, it's actually in I3. And it will also be part of the plan. I3, and the district will provide appropriate gear for all employees who work outside in inclement weather. So we believe that that is captured in I3.
does seem to address providing appropriate gear.
And B.
Yeah, references inclement weather. It doesn't have any notification to our members, if you wanna speak to that.
I think we discussed it in caucus too, and it was about like an event is happening. And we put it on the website, we send alerts. And I mean, that's protocol that's already occurring. And so I think in that is notification to staff, it's notification to the union, it's kind of happening all at the same time. And so that's actually part of the plan. What would be the plan that is shared on May 1st, be about the notification protocol. And the different options that would be made available under different situations. So that's everything that would be included in the plan that everyone is gonna have. So I guess we're trying to anchor back to that.
Okay.
We are in agreement, we picked up E2. F, we're in agreement. G, we're in agreement. H, we added, we have. You have proposed, Article L3. We went ahead and added H. We try to capture your language there.
That might be a more appropriate place for it, thank you.
Then I4. We went back to our last proposal. Because we want to go back and have staff work with their immediate supervisor. With that. And then with 5 is employees asked to confirm without PPE, it goes back to. They feel it's hard. If an employee simply believes something works, so we go back to 8.
On 4. We're gonna have some challenges around this. I think that we have to find a way to bridge a disconnect between what our members are experiencing, what they're communicating, what they're experiencing, and what the district is offering here. I mean, you know, I guess we're just challenged to figure out a path forward here where we are hearing a different experience from our members than I think the district is acknowledging. Some of our members are certainly telling us they're asking for PPE and not getting it or not getting it fast enough. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. I mean, it, you know, without addressing that problem, I would love to hear from you where you think we should go to address that problem that isn't already in place now.
What our concerns are is what we brought to the table, but not having the control of the delivery of the items. And that being private contract. We don't have the, we can't, that'll be really wrong. And that's something that we can control. Anything else would be, that would be one of the biggest ones.
I think too, we heard from supervisors over and over that the people aren't being denied, so maybe more specificity around a process for connecting those specific they're hearing from, some reinforcement from their building rep or something like that to kind of elevate that in situations where that is the case, because I heard over and over from the supervisors that if they need something, we get it, like we want them to be safe, and we have a budget, our discretionary budget to provide for that. Student services certainly doesn't want to have it elevated to the district level, or a legal issue. So I think that's probably the other side of what, you know, what the conversations are that you're hearing. We're not hearing, like, we want to meet that need too. And to have it codified in a way where it can be agreed. And again, it seemed like it's one of those things that's more ongoing and probably a system improvement that we can just make together over time. I think we need to address very specific situations where that is occurring.
Thank you. We'll process through some of this, maybe have some more questions. Go ahead, would you like to continue?
Yes. And in J, we did hear you, including being invited to and compensated for attending. That is not part of the law. Part of the law would be the students should be vacation. In occasion, they have been asked to attend some meetings to hear the voice. We do want to hear the voice, and they do have that opportunity to do that by sharing the data, by sharing statements, either written or verbal, with the case manager, and then shall be consulted as well.
I could add here that those that work one-on-one can also share positive experiences with parents and the wins, and that is something that benefits everybody, to be able to hear a story that demonstrates the growth, not just numbers and test results like that. So I think it's not just them there to say things like, you know, well, that'll never work, or this one. It's sometimes just saying, guess what? The plan that you started with is going really well. And that invitation doesn't mean they have to come, because you talked about how difficult it is to get all the same people on the call. But when it matters,
And that can be shared either written or verbal too.
Yeah.
Without attending.
both ways.
I have a question about how that would look on the ground. How would a classroom aide or somebody else working with a student know that the meeting to discuss the IEP or 504 was coming up in order to give that information?
So they have access to it already, so they would know when it's expiring. They could request that information possibly from the case manager as well, right? It's my understanding from Elaine that the behavioral support plans, IEPs, all of that information is available to the person working with the student. In that, there's usually a mechanism for tracking data kind of ties back to some of the incident reports we're gonna talk about here, but like, but it's all tracked at that student level instead of the employee level. But that the information is available. Does that answer your question? To me, like, it should be available, and if it's not available, that's something that we should improve upon for sure. But I don't think it's our intent to withhold information from someone who's supporting the student. If there's documented needs and data that needs to be tracked, I would hope that you're involved with that process.
I think we would know that it's due in January, but we may not know unless our case manager tells us specifically, we're doing this Tuesday, January 3rd. We're not gonna know that unless our case manager tells us. And I think it depends on the individual case manager, whether or not they choose to share that information.
There's just no process for us to know when these meetings are happening and provide any feedback or input or ideas or tips or anything that would help the student. And I don't think I just don't see where in this of J where it says very sort of may give input, it doesn't really address what the concern that we've been raising all along is, like, how and when and who's involved in that and how do we find out about it, and shouldn't we be invited to give that input? Like, shouldn't there be a proactive step on the part of the people conducting the meeting to solicit that input from the people that are, especially the classroom mates who may be spending 6 hours a day with that student, whereas maybe an audiologist sees the student once a week for an hour or something. It seems like you'd want the input of the people who are spending the most time with the student. And I don't, in the reading, I read the Senate bill and I read the law that was implemented. And it does say including being invited to.
And I have it open right here and it says they must, not they may, they must be consulted with. Pretty much our exact text from our proposal in J, that they must be consulted with, including being invited to. So I'm confused, maybe I'm misreading that, but according to,
Directly, they shall be consulted.
but you have may give input.
These are the behavior support plans. This is not the.
I see, you're right, or well, I use 504s.
And I think also what the hope is that you or staff members don't wait until the day before, don't wait until that January deadline to share any information. That you're constantly sharing the data, you're constantly sharing how it went. So that that your voice is being heard by your case managers. Today was good, today was bad, today this happened, today that happened. And not until the end, we're not when that meeting is coming. So that your voice is, like, don't wait until then.
So for staff that don't have access to Synergy, how are we supposed to know who the case manager is, when the meeting is happening, what data we can provide?
Expanding your speech idea with SEs possibly because they're directly reported to SEs, so you should know what the case manager is.
Well, classified staff that are not SEAs, that may be LMAs or transportation assistants or other classified employees that may be working directly with the student for hours a day, how are they to be included in the process? I don't see that piece of it.
I mean, I kind of think it's a mechanism that a process that needs to be developed outside of this, because your guys' proposed J didn't include a mechanism that we've ignored in our proposal. So I think it's just something that needs to be outside of that. We did take something out from your proposal.
And I think too, that, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing too, and just wondering is that, like, if, because this is kind of a new law, if it's one of those processes where we need, as a district, I say we, as a district, all of us, continue to work with case managers and stuff to say, I know for years and years and years, we didn't share this information, but now we do. And so we need to work to find a way to be sure that you guys are getting the information, especially in the classroom. And that's what I'm wondering, if it needs to be a bigger process.
I will say, Tiffany, when there is going to be a behavior evaluation meeting, I am looped in because I'm a specials teacher, so they do check with me and they say we need this information by such and such date. The counselor usually has that up, or the case manager, one or two, so it can work, but it would be nice if.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like we have a standard.
There's a system that catches everybody, and then it's on me to respond in time, because they gave me that opportunity to get my input. That is a possible way forward, if those who have overlap with those students can also know, like, if you have any input, this is when we need it by, the avenue that it needs to be delivered to, really.
Including being invited to is in the law, and it was in our proposal, and it was removed from your configuration, Jay.
Feedback on that.
Did she give any more like reasoning around that, taking this specific language out? I'm just curious as to why. Because invited to doesn't mean that you have to plan it. I know it's like a huge piece to be a special ed secretary and plan those meetings, and it's really hard to get everyone who needs to be there to come. So that doesn't mean that inviting Margaret means she has to be available to come that day. It's just you're giving her the opportunity to come if she is available and can and has things to add.
I know that it's something that she has been working with on the river, locker, and that's what I was suggesting.
Okay. I think it's hard to, speaking for myself, to go forward on this, not knowing kind of what the specific concerns were.
We still included if they participate in meetings. But there it is implied.
Okay, yes. I'm still not sure, like, the difference. Reason for the difference.
We're likely to have more questions on this, but in the interest of time, I think if you would like to move on to K.
Oh, yeah, Bethany is watching online and she did mention ORS 343.068 as a reference for your team. And send it those sentences. Can you repeat that?
The ORS is 343.068.
Not 0.
68.
Okay, we are in agreement, mostly everything, including 3. We did not, pick up 5, because we believe that that is still something that we need to work on outside of the bargaining to create that tracking, what that looks like. That would be something together. We do love data, and we guess love data too, we have accurate data, and I think that it's an interest in both parties. But we don't know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going back to our last photo. I think it's L2, after an event during which an employee suffers an injury as a result of student behavior, the employee shall be provided appropriate time to recover. Will not be required to work with the individual who caused the injury until such time as the employee and the immediate supervisor have met and conferred We took that out. Again, that's a point that's really discretionary. There is some discretionary leave that can be granted and has been granted by our building supervisors as if situations arise for both classified and licensed staff. So we'd like to maintain that discretion. And then L3 is the piece that we moved over into H under property.
And we're on agreement. And we're on agreement. And then, again, we go back to our previous proposal. And we feel that OB is already addressed in Article 21. And O2 is addressed in Article 5F4.
And on this one, I think it felt odd to us to pull out very specific positions when these tasks here are already integrated in other parts of the agreement and apply to everything. So just bringing that back.
Sorry, where did you say? O2?
O2, Article 5F4.
Article 5. Employee rights and responsibilities.
My guess. No, it's access to technology. Yeah.
Yeah, and a sufficient amount of time, but yeah, they will work with their immediate supervisor, a sufficient amount of time during their scheduled work hours, not including rest and meal breaks, to check email or other digital resources.
Okay. Okay, so add 2A. Yeah.
I corrected it to say campus security because they're like, that's their job title, not campus monitor. So that's all good.
And I know we celebrated earlier for Article 31. Oh, yeah, but they're signed.
Yeah, I didn't.
We got nothing.
Anybody have a pen?
What's that?
Oh, I got it.
David?
We can celebrate again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wake up.
I'll have to sing along. Thank you. Well, we're only scheduled until 2:30 today. I think we have more than 21 minutes of discussion ahead of us. So we should talk about next steps.
Oh, did we forget to tell you, you can't get out of this building until we're done?
Sorry. Board meeting tonight.
They're ready to TA on 10. That's what I just heard.
Yeah. Let's go.
In the room. They board can start with ours. Travis did say, take whatever you need.
So there was an email that said, like, forward, was that an error?
We have access to the room, so that's,
I think you might be mad at me if I'm not ready.
yeah, no, I
Just saying.
If you're not ready for this board meeting?
Yes.
They would.
You're not desperate.
That's what I'm saying, we just have access to the room until that.
I think regardless of how much time we have left today, can we get another date on the books? Is it possible for us to meet 2 weeks from today?
Let me look at my secret list. I made secret reservations just in case.
Oh.
So these are days that this building is available. Doesn't mean any people are. But we have room. February 4th. February 12th. February 21st or February 27th. And we have no idea.
22nd.
First.
I'm not available.
What? Well,
You didn't call out the 11th, you're not available here on the 11th.
the building's not available. Doesn't mean I can't look into somewhere else, but it hasn't worked well in the past.
Tuesdays, the upstairs children class.
So
You're the report with them.
Next week.
Michelle can't do it.
So, and the secret days, are there any days that, might work?
It's the 12th of
The
it.
secret reservation?
Both of the Wednesday.
I'm.
You said it, well.
Yeah, that's the technical term.
Better availability for the building at like midnight.
Yeah,
Yeah, except for that.
we could go on TJ's.
Sit down.
Yeah, bargain from 10 PM to 6 AM.
Friday night.
If we could find a location for the 11th. Is there schedule availability for the 11th?
Not until after.
we usually do it at transportation is the only other good space to do it. Also, it's not available on the 11th.
Well, I was thinking of maybe if we could reach out to our HCA partners and see if they'd be willing to loan us the building for that thing. Or some other third-party location. I'm trying to get creative because I.
Yeah, so we'll look on, look.
And a half day might be fine. Did you say not until noon?
Yes.
That probably is okay.
Yeah,
I could
Um,
probably find somewhere for a half day.
Or the third,
In this building.
or the third, there's no students that day, we could.
Third is a PD day though, so that'll be in teaching.
Saying there's a lot more to think through.
Because they're supposed to.
Because
The 11th, like noon to 4. Might be away.
11. I think we could make that work.
Okay. Let's put that on calendar.
It's also a board day. That's also board work sessions,
Love it.
11. I'll have to ask to be, I'll work with Rose on using space, so I think that should be fine, but timing is that. Do you participate in those?
So if we were to do the 11th, we would need to find an alternate location.
I think I could find something there.
What time do you need to be done though to do for the board? Of the board?
Is there a reason we can't go into 6? We can go until 4, but this last proposal is disheartening. And I don't think even if we go until 4, we're gonna reach an agreement on our contract today.
We need another date regardless, yeah.
Could we
Let's,
do 9 to 2:30 on the 11th, just like today?
Yeah,
And the 11th is, no, K-12.
No, we gotta start at noon on the 11th.
Okay. And I mean, we could keep going a little bit longer today if you think we can make movement on some other articles. I don't see us settling Article 19 today.
If we can schedule noon to 4 on, and then take the rest of the conversation offline, I think that's a path, and then we can maybe come up with another day too to schedule.
On this, look at another day now.
Or take that offline, and so we can look at calendars. Yeah. Which then preserves our time now to go into caucus and eventually come back.
I'll get a confirmation during caucus on the 11th. Riverdale building, and then move forward.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. We'll go into caucus now and,
I just,
Yeah.
just a quick note to Sierra. Sierra, I'm sorry that you feel disheartened by the last proposal on Article 19. Just know that it's not the district's intent to not provide a safe workplace for employees. The language that was developed is lengthy, it's very prescriptive. And that doesn't mean, by not accepting it, doesn't mean that we don't want to improve conditions. So I just want to make that really, really clear. I think the partnership that you are developing through labor management, I feel like the strength that you're building with members at the site, I feel like there's so much growth happening there. So I hope you do take part in that and understand that it is also our goal to promote safe work.
That's great to hear, and I hope that we can make some progress. We were looking for a settlement today, so.
Yes, I would say we want to.
thank you for that. Okay,
So are we going to meet? Yeah.
15's not gonna join us. Thank you guys for coming back. We just wanted to honor all of our members who are online who joined us today. We had put out a lot of communication to our membership, really hoping that today would be our last day of bargaining. We're hosting a general membership meeting on Thursday, and we were really hoping to do a ratification vote on that day. So we know that our members who are watching today are really disappointed. And we wanted to honor their attendance online today and let them know that we unfortunately have not reached an agreement today. But thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate your support. We will be back at the bargaining table on the 11th, and we're gonna continue to work towards an agreement.
Thank you.